Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Straight Talk on Stocks. My name is Jeffrey Dunyan. I am the owner and founder of Safe Option Strategies, and joining me, as always, is Kevin Hurley, managing partner of Hurley Investments, LLC. We are just a couple of guys that understand the markets, know the economy, know what's happening, know what's causing things to happen, and we're going to give you the straight, no BS talk on how it all works and how it all affects you. We're going to mix in some politics, we're going to mix in some sports. Occasionally, we are just going to talk about what our kids or our wives have done recently to piss us off. Enjoy another episode of Straight Talk on Stocks.
All right, so you see what's going on. After the market closed yesterday. In fact, was it in the first 3 or 4 minutes after the market closed last night, I think?
Of course, it was right after no one could really trade except for after hours trading.
Yeah, but there's your big headline right there. There's the big one. Dow drops 350 points, actually down 450 points now. Dow drops 350 points as Apple's guidance cuts stoke fears of a global economic slowdown.
Way to go, Cook. You know, I don't like the guy, Jeff. Oh, and there's your ISM manufacturing index that just came through at a whopping 54.1, down, 3.6 points from what it was expected. Still expansion, but it's slowing down.
Yeah, that's I don't know what the word is to describe it. I don't want to go right to the word pissed off because it's not that bad, but it's irritating that people are so eager to sell over the fact that a growing economy is not growing as fast as it was.
Well, let's start off on Apple really quickly because I'm going to jump to that in a minute, but I want to go through Apple first. You made a comment that made me not sleep at night last night, and I thought about it 10 ways to Sunday.
Did you dream about me?
Realized, I wonder if Jeffrey's onto something. You made the comment about, and I won't call it conspiracy theory.
All right, do you want me to tell everyone? Do you want me to tell everyone my conspiracy theory? Can I?
Yeah, let's hear it. Let's bring it out. Let's start with that.
When I was I'd been trading for maybe 10 years or so. When Apple started to become more of a breakout company, they started to become the darling of Wall Street. What was this? Like maybe 2003? When did the first iPhone come out? 2003, 2004, somewhere in there. You looking it up?
I'm trying to.
Okay, so sometime in that range when Apple came out. I mean, they'd had the iPod for a while, and now they're going to take the iPod and stick it on a cellular phone. And so you got that going on. And what I noticed, or what I started to notice, is that compared to a lot of other companies, Steve Jobs was masterful because I use the word masterful because I think he did this in a way that few people saw it the way I saw it. And I consider myself the smartest man in the world. So that's why I say masterful. Anyway, guidance, every time Apple reported their earnings, it seemed like they guided really low, but not so much so that it made people suspicious. The commentary that I would remember hearing is, they're cautious on their guidance. There would always be some reason why they weren't going to do as much revenue. They weren't going to sell as many new units as what analysts were expecting. And then every time they would report, it would be this monstrous crushing number. I mean, they beat the numbers so ridiculously that more often than not, there were a few exceptions, but more often than not, Apple stock would just take off to the upside. It would just go crazy after an earnings report. And Jobs was good, and he was clever in the way he would word it. And you just kind of knew going into an earnings report that they were going to have amazing numbers and they were going to guide low for the next quarter.
So let me ask you a question then. Let me interrupt you and ask you a question. Are you saying Tim Cook is that bright?
No, I think Tim Cook is one of the least bright CEOs on planet Earth for a big company, because it's taken him how many years at the helm to start to figure out what came so naturally to Steve Jobs? Because here's my conspiracy theory. All right, this is it. You've got Apple can do share buybacks up to about 2 weeks before they report earnings. Is that right?
3 weeks before, I believe.
Three weeks. Okay. And as of today, the 3rd of January, they've got maybe a week left on that, probably a little less than a week left on that 3-week window that they can buy back shares. Now,
Their earnings isn't defined, but I think it's going to be January 31st.
Okay, January 31st, February 1st, somewhere right in there. And that's consistent with what they've been doing for the last several quarters. It's been, the last day of the month or the first day or two of the following month. So 31st, 1st, 2nd, somewhere right in there, they're going to report. They're down to about a week for stock buyback. Now, I think if my understanding of how a big company like this does stock buyback, their prices are already set for what they can buy back shares at. So in other words, they cannot purposely tank their stock so that they can buy a whole bunch of it back at a way cheaper price. I believe, in spite of their daily incompetence, I think the SEC might just have some things in place that protect from a company doing that. Am I wrong in that assumption?
You are correct.
Okay, so what I think is going on is this. Apple knows it's going to miss on its numbers when it reports. Okay, I don't think they're making up the data about sales being down in China, about sales being down specifically because of China's economy slowing down, and some of it they want to blame on trade tariffs and so forth. But I don't think they're making up that data. What I think Tim Cook has figured out, or is starting to figure out after all this time at the helm, is that he can help a bunch of his rich cronies profit from Apple by tanking the stock, making the announcement. Not that the announcement is made up or BS, but making the announcement 4 weeks before they report earning, giving that stock a chance to come down another 10, 15%, 20% between now and wherever it ends up bottoming out. And then he's going to have all of his rich buddies that can climb back in preparation for an earnings report that will now beat the numbers because of the crazy, ridiculous lowered expectations. That's my conspiracy
that kill his
theory.
credibility if he says, hey, our revenue is only going to be $84 billion, just 84, not 89. Doesn't that kill his credibility, though, if he comes in at now 87, 88, and he's not trustworthy? It kills the whole idea there, doesn't it?
How does it kill the idea? Because what does he say? Okay, I'm trying to picture myself being the CEO of a big gigantic company. What does he say to his shareholders when in a conference call on January 31st or February 1st, when their numbers come in at 87 billion instead of 84 billion, and he says, "Wow, we're so proud of what we did with iTunes, or we're so proud of what we did with Apple Pay, and it really exceeded our expectations, and we really made up for the loss in revenue on iPhone sales that we were projecting with a surge in this." No, do you think he loses his credibility when he does that?
So I would think,
"Oh, that's fantastic news that
doesn't know his numbers, caused a panic, lowered my stock price for nothing."
So what? You think he cares about you and I? You think he cares about the 500 shares I own in Apple?
Piss me off about it. I'd be like, screw this guy. Doesn't know what he's doing. He just lowered my stock price today, $14 or $12.
Well, their lack of new products, their lack of innovation since the death of Steve Jobs. I haven't had a lot of faith in this guy from day one. I've had some faith in the company putting out a very high quality product that I like. And I would even say products. I use a bunch of Apple stuff. I'm wearing an Apple Watch right now. I've got an Apple TV. I've got MacBooks in my home. I use their products a lot. I like the quality of their products. I like the platform. I like how the things work. So I've not lost faith in the company. I've never thought this guy was a brilliant CEO. In fact, I think he was put into the position he is as much out of political correctness as in his ability to actually run the company.
Okay, give me a minute here. First iPhone, June 29th of 2007. And I'll be honest with you, I think I got an iPhone 2 or 4. I can't remember which one was my first one. And I loved it.
I remember now a year and a half ago when they were celebrating that 10-year anniversary of the iPhone. So I was off a little bit. But even when they were counting the number of iPods they were selling, and they had the first touchscreen iPod maybe a year ahead of the actual iPhone, even back then, that was when Steve Jobs was starting to develop this habit of low guidance, and then they would crush it. Now, in the midst of my conspiracy theory, I don't know if Tim Cook is smart enough to have done that. It may have just been blatant stupidity on his part to come out on the 2nd of January and say, "Hey, everyone, we're going to blow it. We're going to screw up badly. And we're going to miss our numbers really badly."
So give me my 2 minutes. I wanted to talk to you really quickly. No one likes Steve Jobs. He leaves the company. He gets ousted. He comes back, revitalizes the company, and people give him credit for the products that they've fallen in love with. As time goes on, I'll be honest with you, I'm not so sure Apple's phone is better than a Pixel or a Samsung anymore. I think they've had better screens. They've come to market quicker with newer innovations within the phone. Steve Jobs dies. He hands it over to Cook instead of Ivy, who has the ability to innovate, to be more like him. They change direction and they sit on their laurels for 4 years until they become a $1 trillion company. The curse of the $1 trillion company gets on them, and you're going to laugh at how I'm going to say this, and I feel like they were a Republican pre-Trump that was out of touch with conservative America. I feel like Apple right now is a Democrat in a conservative United States, where they're trying to come up with the next greatest thing. They're way out there in left field. They don't have a clue. There's glitches now. I am becoming more and more disenamored, not so excited about Apple products like I used to be, because they're not as great as they used to be. And for that reason, even though I've got $5.3 million of Apple shares amongst accounts and money I manage, they're not the Apple of old. And I think people need to wake up to that reality that they might never become that company of old ever again. So where I'm going at with all this is they're still overweighted in portfolios. They're still overweighted in funds. In fact, more people with their loss from last year picked up more Apple shares in the funds to balance it out on a fund level. And I think this is just the start, where since Apple did it, you're going to see more and more companies pre-announce, hey, we're slowing down in China. That'll be the mantra through the earnings. Our numbers don't quite meet what they're supposed to because China's slowing down. Even if companies don't have a whole lot of sales in China, which I don't think Apple has a whole lot of sales in China. People argue with me, well, they just lowered their guidance by, $5 billion. Well, again, $5 billion directly related to China out of 84 or 89 billion is not really a significant amount of their revenue. It's their next run for a market where they can flood the market with iPhones, and they're doing a horrible job at it. So where I'm going at with all this, Apple's not the Apple it used to be. It's not going to be, because they don't have a Steve Jobs and they blew it on their CEO. They've rested on their laurels. They're going to pay the price, and they should. Go Google.
Okay. All right. So let me see where I can tear you apart here. let me see where I can pick this up. Okay. Number one, I don't disagree with everything you're saying. A couple of things you've got me scratching my head on. Number one, I completely missed the connection with conservative America. I don't look. I know what Tim Cook's personal politics are. He's not as outspoken and as obnoxious about his anti-Trump hate Republicans, hate the country. He's not outspoken like some corporate CEOs are, but he doesn't really hide his politics either. I mean, it's kind of obvious where he falls on the political spectrum. I don't see the tie
just blame the politics for his loss in China.
Oh, okay.
The tariff.
Okay, when you say right, that
Trump did.
All right, that makes sense to me.
Blamed his company's losses on a policy that we've needed for a decade or more.
Okay, that part of it I get, but when you said he's out of touch with conservative America, that doesn't compute. That to me that made no sense. Apple being number one, conservative America is 35% of the country, and liberal loony America is 35% of the country, and the other 30 is sticking their finger in their mouth, holding it up into the wind, and whatever the latest headline is they've seen is what's pushing their politics, because they're basically clueless. I love these people that think they're all self-righteous, saying, "Oh, I'm independent." That means you're an idiot. That's independent equals I'm too stupid to have a political opinion and to take a stand on anything. But that's a completely so when you say out of touch with conservative America, that part I don't get. I get what you're just saying now, and I agree with the idea that he wants to throw some of the blame, or cast at least part of the blame, if not all the blame, on our current political policies towards China. We're the reason China's economy is slowing down. We're the reason that's hurting the iPhone. I mean, you can connect those dots pretty easy. You can say, okay, Trump is slapping tariffs on China. China's economy is shrinking because of that. And as a result, they can't buy as many iPhones because they're not selling as many rice patties and to the rest of the world. And so, that's what's causing the problem. Okay, I get that. And there may be some truth to that. We could have a whole additional conversation. We could have a completely separate conversation if we wanted to about China.
Conservative America wants an iPhone that's gonna work, that doesn't need upgrades and 4 or 5 patches to it. They don't want it slowing down, that it can't work more than 2 years.
But again, you're conflating two different things. Conservative America, well, so does liberal America want a product that's going to work, and that they don't have to upgrade continually, and that they don't have to, have all these patches to.
Greatest and wants to look pretty. If it works or not, it doesn't matter.
Just see that. Yeah, I just don't. That's just you're making stuff up. That's off in left field.
Great.
So here's the thing. I'm going to circle back for just a second to my conspiracy theory. I'm not going to go over the whole thing again. Here's the thing. I say it partially in jest. But the reality is, I don't know if Tim Cook is smart enough to actually calculate that this is a way I could help out. Okay, let me add the one part that I kind of missed on my conspiracy. Do you really think, in spite of all the SEC rules and laws on insider trading, do you think a guy like Tim Cook, when he's had a few of his Shirley Temple cocktails or whatever prissy little drink he drinks, do you think at some point in time he's not saying to some friends of his who are not Apple employees, boy, our stock is going to take a hit tomorrow because I'm going to announce that we're going to lower our guidance, and we're going to lower it dramatically, and our stock's going to be down 10, 15% from where it's at right now before we get to our earnings report at the end of the month. And some of those people are going to say, well, the 1,000, the 1,500, the 2,000 shares that I have in Apple, which is, maybe small potatoes compared to the Warren Buffetts and some of the mutual funds and hedge funds, they're looking at that and saying, so what drunk Tim is saying is that I should watch for a strong support level, or watch for another 10 to 15% drop, and I should load up on Apple, because Tim is then giving me a little wink and a nod, and saying, yeah, and then when all the analysts lower their expectation for us, we're going to knock it out of the park at the end of the month. Now I'm making all of this up, obviously, but to think that kind of stuff doesn't happen, To think that a big high profile CEO is not talking to his spouse or his partner, is not talking to his friends, is not having a conversation with his son or daughter, or I mean, to think that doesn't happen. And I mean, that's just ludicrous. That's absolutely insane to think that is not going on. And a smart person, someone who's just a little bit astute, who's a little bit in tune, is going to say, oh, Tim just kind of gave away something accidentally, wink, wink. Tim just gave away something about Apple stock going way down. I'm going to call my broker tomorrow and say, hey, watch for Apple to drop about 10% and then load up. That's ultimately where I'm going with the theory, is that I don't think and that's why I asked you the question about, I don't think Apple can tank their own stock and then still buy at a lower price, because any buyback orders they're going to put in as a company, I'm guessing that they've already had to do that. They've already had to clear that with the SEC, and those prices are already set.
Well, the rules are in place, the Securities Exchange Commission, that would be blatant. A blatant
insider trading
mistake. It'd be front running. There's all kinds of things you could call it, but if that were to happen, I mean, it's
major insider trading. I get that. It's major insider trading. But let me ask you this question. Let me take it out to a more logical, impossible to prove insider trading type thing. Let me make this absolutely a bulletproof scenario. Okay. Let's say, and just hypothetically, and I'm not beating up on Tim Cook. He's the obvious example because Apple's the stock that's falling today. He's having a little cocktail party at his house over New Year's weekend, right? He's got guests over, he's got friends over, him or somebody else there, some high level Apple corporate person that knows this announcement is coming up on the 2nd. Very innocuously lets this slip out. They're not actually looking to help a friend make a buck off it. They just let it slip out. Oh boy, we're gonna make this announcement and the stock is gonna tank. And that's wrong right there. That's the place where a crime is potentially being committed. But how do you prove that? Because here's what ultimately happens. Maybe that individual that was just told that at a party doesn't sneak into a patio somewhere or step outside for a moment, call up his broker and say, hey, hold off on those shares of Apple you were going to buy tomorrow. Apple's going to take another 10 to 15% drop. I want you to wait and watch for the drop and then pick up shares. Okay, I'm not saying that it happens that blatantly or that directly. What happens is that person says something to someone else. Man, you know what I overheard at Cook's party over New Year's? Apple's getting ready to just really, pull the rug out from under everybody, and this thing is going to tank. And then someone hears that from someone, and someone hears that from someone. And let's say hypothetically that news gets to me, and I was getting ready to load. I mean, look at this. Okay, I brought this up a little prematurely, but I'm getting ready to buy Apple because I see this trend line right here, and I'm like, okay, down here under 150, down around 150, 250, 150, there's some strong support. Apple's just had a nice little bounce right there. They've had 4 or 5 days that they're moving back to the upside. They're getting close to having some technical crossovers and some technical indicators that are going to bolster things. I think this thing has taken a big enough hit. I'm ready to get back into Apple, or I'm ready to roll my position. I'm going to roll some long puts and buy some more shares on Apple. But then I hear from someone who hears from someone who hears from someone who hears from someone that this announcement may be coming. I'm suddenly not breaking a law by trading on insider information, because number one, I don't know if it's legitimate that actually came out of Tim Cook's mouth. But number two, I'm just going to wait a day, 1 day. It's not going to be a major impact on what I do. So I'm just going to hold off 1 day. Lo and behold, the announcement comes at the end of trading yesterday. The stock is down 10% this morning. And I'm like, wow, maybe that information did originate with Tim Cook. Maybe he did let something out of the bag over the weekend. And I just profited from it big time. Now that's less conspiracy because that's kind of that. I mean, that's not so much conspiracy. That's just people being too stupid to know when to keep their mouths shut. And word gets out, and some people are smart enough to profit off it, and others aren't. That's all I'm saying. That's all it is. Did you leave me alone, Kevin? I think Kevin logged off. He may have logged off inadvertently, so I'll run solo with this. All right. Here's the other thing that was bugging me this morning. And this has been the case for a while. Good news is bad news, and bad news is bad news. When you get into a market that is as paranoid and skittish as the market we're in right now. Let me go back to this headline here. You get into a market. This is one of the other headlines, and this is the headline that should be, in my opinion, this is the one that should be dominating the markets this morning. I keep accidentally going. U.S. private payrolls surge in December, even though weekly jobless claims rise a little bit. All right, forget about the weekly jobless claims for this reason. Number one, it's the holiday season and it's meaningless. Everybody hires a few more people. My daughter had a friend over the house last night. He works for a company that makes these silicone rings. Like my wife and I both have these rings that we put on if we go to the gym or if we're going to doing something outside and we don't want to scratch up our wedding ring. And we have these rings that they look, from a distance, they look like they're metal, but they're made of silicone. He works for a company locally that does that. They just laid off like 30 people yesterday. He was one of the ones that didn't get laid off. So he was over here telling my daughter how happy he was that he didn't get laid off. But I was explaining to him that that's just a seasonal thing. It's not that big a deal, nor should he consider it that big. I mean, he should feel really fortunate that he kept his job. But, forget about the employment claims numbers that come right after the Christmas holiday. From my standpoint, they're meaningless. Look at the fact that U.S. private payrolls increased for the whole month of December, and a lot of those are jobs that are gonna stick. A lot of those are jobs that are going to stick. That should be dominating the news right now. But it's bad news because of the fear that Jerome Powell and the other Fed chairs are going to say, well, that just justifies us in getting more stuff off the balance sheet at a faster pace or the same pace. And that gives us justification for a couple more rate hikes. And that's not good for the stock market.
Let's do 4 rate hikes in 2019. Again,
let's do 10. Let's do one every month.
We only have 8 meetings, so
let's take the market to historic lows and let's get our interest rate back up around 8 or 9%. I had a loan for 9%. The first home that I purchased, I was at 9%, and we were ecstatic that it was down off the 16 and 17% that my parents were dealing with in the late 70s and early 80s. So when at 9%, I'm telling my wife, the first house we buy, this is fantastic. This is half the interest rate my parents paid. and I read the last time I refinanced my house, I was at 2.87. We've really been spoiled with interest rates. That wasn't the subject I was going to go to, but we've really been spoiled with interest rates. I'm not against interest rates going up a little bit. I just think Powell's an idiot when he opens his mouth.
Good call.
You know how you can tell if Jerome Powell is saying something stupid?
He opens his mouth?
His lips are moving. Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure he's a brilliant guy. I'm sure he's a really smart guy. Man alive, could you not just, the money he makes, could you not hire a publicist? I mean, seriously? I spell Powell.
You would like to think so.
How much
You'd like to think so, but part of you also thinks, how bright was the last person you saw that majored in economics in college? I'm thinking about one person in particular.
I had an economics professor, tenured professor in economics, that spent more time He spent more time talking to people, teaching the class how to file bankruptcy when you got too much credit card debt, because he had done it 4 times and he was proud of it. And he's a tenured economics professor that's filed bankruptcy 4 times in his life. What an idiot.
Well, the economics guy I was thinking of was a salesman and thought he was a good salesman, about 5'7" from New York.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, so I don't know what he makes per year, but Jerome Powell is worth $112 million. Here's my point. Here's the reason I looked that up. Hire a freaking publicist. Hire a speaking coach. Holy crap, for just a fraction of what he makes, I would be happy to consult him on saying, hey, Jerome, hey, Jerry, when you get in front of the microphone, how about you not stick your foot in your mouth and say stupid stuff that's going to tank the market? You can still do what you're planning on doing policy-wise, but how about you just not be an idiot in the way you deliver it? You're allegedly a smart guy.
It'd be nice. Anyway, not going to happen, but it'd be nice.
No, he's too stupid. Look at that. There's your fresh lows of the day. 581 points down. Nice, man. Nice. All right. Well, there you have it.
Let me go on a rant today, Jeffrey. And
there's what's going on today. Good stuff. Fun stuff.
Out of curiosity, I wonder if you'd ever find someone that put in a bunch of protection on Apple before it fell and find out they were related to Cook in some way, shape, or form, dinner party.
I've wondered often how the SEC does that. If there is some process where if they do some kind of a search on the number of orders, like if someone put in a massive order for long puts 10 minutes before the market closed yesterday, something that to the average person would not look like any kind of a coincidence, that would look like it was planned. I wonder if they automatically investigate that, if they automatically look at that and say, is there any way, shape, or form that this person is related to anyone at Apple that may have had that information and known that was going to happen? That I don't know. I've always been curious about that, but I don't know the inner workings of the SEC. So I don't know.
Well, at some time you need to teach people your collar trading strategy that you teach. With,
I've had long puts on Apple. I've had long puts on Apple because I've had them in a collar trade. So when Apple, when this is going on with Apple, I had long puts that I rolled from 220. I was up at 220 or 225 with long puts. And then I cashed them and rolled them and got some puts at I think I was at 180 just ahead of their last earnings report. And then those were getting close to expiration. I had to roll them at 170. But each time I've rolled them, I've also rolled a short call with them that's paid for the long puts. So I'm still protected in Apple at long puts that go to January expiration. I think it's the 18th of this month. I've got January expiring long puts that are at 170. So Apple down around 130, 140. I mean, I'm loving this. This isn't dinging me in any way. I'm not making any money on Apple right now. I'm getting into a position really quickly where I can leverage into a lot more shares. And look, okay, all the conspiracy theory, all the other stuff aside, Apple's not going away. Do they need to fix some things? Yeah, they've got to come up with something inventive. They've got to figure out where's our next good product. Where's the next thing that we can do to be innovative? It's not going to be a 4K Apple TV instead of the old one. It's not going to be another generation of the Apple Watch. They've got to do something. The iPhone's got to have some kind of a big breakthrough, some radically different design, something big. But even in the absence of that happening, you've got a company that is, in fact, it's not hype, it's not make believe. They are massively growing their services. This is a money printing machine. And that's not going to change. What I think is going to change is Apple going from being one of these growth stocks to a value stock. People are going to start buying Apple to anchor a portfolio, not to grow a portfolio. That's just, it's, that's what's changing. There's going to be other companies that are innovating things that are going to be the next darlings of the stock market for terms of massive growth stocks. So Apple's not going away. It'll come back. And it won't be long. I mean, when I say they're not going to be a growth company, they're not going to be a company that grows 100% in a year like they have had, like they've done before in the past. They're going to be a company that if the Dow is up 20% in a year, Apple's going to do 25%. If the Dow's up 10%, Apple's going to do 12 or 13. That's the kind of company they're going to be.
Well, just remember, how long can they stay out of favor until, what am I trying to say? They were out of favor for years and they should have been at a much higher price. And I really had to fight for some clientele to stick with them. Stick with them. They're a good company. And then it seems to me they ran from like 250 up to 770 in a 6 to 9 month period. They just shot up.
Yeah, that was
so
fast
I guess
move.
The question is, how long can people stay with Apple while the market's irrational? How long can you stay solvent or take losses in your portfolio, especially if you don't know how to protect, until Apple bounces back? It's going to be a challenge, I think, for the next year. I think 2019 will be a very volatile year. It could be higher at the end, but I think it's going to be twice as bad as what we just went through in 2018. A lot of stimulus, a lot of QE to pull out of the market, a lot of manipulation that the market has to catch up with.
Yeah, this is insane. Here we go again. Rising fears of, what does that say? Rising fears of an economic slowdown, not a contraction, an economic slowdown. Pull your heads out, people. There's a big difference. An economic slowdown that's not the sky is falling. Quit being Chicken Little and running around panicking. These algorithm traders.
This helps out my business, though, where I manage money through a protective hedge fund strategy by using those options to buy the right to sell a stock at a certain price for a certain period of time. You know how important this is for all of your students who've gone through your education?
If people want to stay in the market and they don't know how to hedge a position, this is not the right time to be in the market. It's as simple as that. What's that one guy's name? I sent you that article yesterday. What's that guy's name that's been like the hedge fund master of Wall Street for a decade or more, and he lost 37% last year? The Dow's down 6% and he lost 37%.
David Einhorn, I think.
Do you think he's just made a killing off of the fact that he wasn't any smarter than anyone else? He just took advantage of a 10-year bull run, made him look like a genius.
He got lucky with gold way back when, and he's been eating it ever since.
The point I'm making is he's no smarter than anybody else that has a computer and knows how to use it. Because I didn't lose 37% last year. I made money last year. So he's an idiot. All right, Kevin, we both got a lot of stuff to do today. Let's wrap up.
Appreciate you having me with you.
Let's
Thank you very much for getting some things off my chest this morning, and I will see you tomorrow.
Let's do it again. See ya.
Bye-bye.